Good morning, Lagos, and welcome to Freshly Pressed 981. It's a show that brings you detailed analysis of our newspaper stories this morning for today, the 15th of January 2019. Lagos, you're listening to Smooth 98.1, and my name is Valentine.
And I'm Kayode Baker.
And we're joined this morning by a wonderful analyst in the studio. I was talking about Justin Ijeh. He's at Justin Ijeh on
Good morning,
social
Lagos.
media. Good morning. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for joining us. Lagos also is, we have Mr. Fred Allison. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
I called you Mr. this morning. So you can find him at Mr. FB Allison on Twitter and all socials, pretty much. We'll start with the stories first on our newspapers, but quick reminder here. Here's how you can communicate with us, sending your contributions and comments on the stories. Send it through WhatsApp to 0809 444 That is 0809 444 for messages only, please. On Twitter, we're at Smooth981FM. When you're sending in tweets, please use that hashtag freshlypressed981.
Let's get on to our first story, and this one comes to you, Fred. It says here, Buhari to name AIG as new inspector. This comes from the Premium Times, and giving insights in the story, it says, barring any last-minute change in decision, President Muhammadu Buhari has tapped Abubakar Adamu Mohammed as the new Inspector General of Police, and the Premium Times are saying they can confirm this based on interactions with top presidency and police sources. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, there have been issues about the current IG of police by the 15th of January would have exceeded, he'll be 6 years old, and he would have exceeded his 35 years of service, which are the recommendation to have him stop being or retire, stop being Inspector General of Police. So having named someone, it's good news. And then just reading the article and figuring out like what are the qualifications of this new IG. One of the things is that he's currently serves as a directing staff at the National Institutions of Policy. So that means it's someone that will take policy into place. He currently worked with Interpol, and he was based in France for a while. It doesn't say specifically how much time he spent there. So that means also you are adhering to international standards and international
best practices.
Best practices, yeah. So it sounds like a good thing that we're seeing. And as I said, when we talked, this was the last time we talked about the IG. This coming with a new person that has no new sets of agenda and all of that just before the elections. So like a good mix, like with more merit based going to the election, as opposed to if it was someone that was already there and has set up his
team in different places.
Exactly.
But also, the article says that his elevation might see several deputy inspector generals retired from service.
Yeah, so that was the practice the last time. Once the current IG of police was made IG, other deputy inspectors that probably were in the same rank with him had to be retired, so that so there'd be adequate, balance and respect.
I honestly don't think that makes sense.
Why not?
If you're going to lose a whole crop of people who are experienced, I'm assuming these people have experience that they bring to bear on the work that they do, just as he does. Now, why do you want to lose all of that wealth of experience on the account of one man because he's become the boss? What happened to hierarchy? Hierarchy really doesn't have anything to do with rank when you think about it. But hey, what do I know?
Yeah, but I guess the argument is that there are other younger officers that will come into place. So
who would benefit from the mentoring of the guys you're sending home?
Yeah, they've been mentoring them since now. It's not as if they've not been forced. I guess that's the argument. The president.
All right, Fred. Thank you very much for that one. This next story comes to you, Justin. It says here, GENCOS threatening to shut down power plants, and our story is taken from the Punch newspaper this morning. It says here, electricity generation companies in the country have said they will be forced to shut down power plants if the challenges facing them are not addressed, and the challenges include liquidity issues and power rejection by electricity distribution companies and so on. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, the underbelly of the botched privatization of the power sector is showing itself. This is another circumstance. So Dr. Joy Ogaji, who's the executive secretary of the Association of Power Generating Companies, has said in her statement that they have liquidity issues, they have power rejection by the discos and gas constraints. I really do not know what those gas constraints are. Is it that the gas is not available? Is it that there's no money to pay for the gas?
Okay.
But she said that they will have to shut down, which is what the article is about. Now, my thoughts are these entities who acquired these assets of the federal government really need to up their game. This thing was open bidding. You should have gotten all the facts. We're tired of hearing that, oh,
You were not given the full
you're
information.
not given the full information. You should have done your due diligence. Well, now you're handling what is actually a very critical sector of the economy and of the daily lives of people in the country. And you keep telling us the stories about having to shut down and all of that. In this article, it says that several plants have been shut down all the way down, have had the generation capacity reduced all the way to zero. So we had our LOGI plant, Sapele, Olorun Shogo, and the Motosho all suffering from this gas constraint issues she talked about, and they all had generation capacity reduced. We had one of them, the Aloji NIPP, was cut off for inability to pay for gas, and then we had also Egbin and Omoko power plants affected by this issue. Low load demand by distribution companies is one of the things that she said is a problem. So apparently, the distribution companies, for those who might not have read the article, the distribution companies are not collecting power from the generation companies. So, you know, on the consumer side, we always feel, oh, we're not generating enough. But apparently, reading this story, what's coming through is the GENCOs are generating power, but the distribution companies are not taking that power for onward distribution to consumers. Those ones have their own issues. Part of it has been touted as liquidity issues, which takes me back to my first comment.
I was going to say, is it a funding problem? Because now you just mentioned that they couldn't supply gas because of inability to get funds.
There's a lot of chocolate coating on this, but when you strip it down, I think it's funding. They don't have the money.
That's the distribution companies.
So
yes.
Are you saying they do not have the money to do what exactly? To provide infrastructure to receive that much capacity, or what?
So you need gas to run. The GENCOs need gas to run. I believe that the DISCOs also need power, right? But they have to pay the GENCOs to absorb the power that they're going to distribute. So on both sides, there seem to be liquidity issues. Both the guys who are generating and the guys, because for the generating side of things, you have a measly 5,000 megawatts at best, right? So it's easy for them to point fingers now and say that they are unable to move the power out because the DISCOs are not taking power from them, but they are also not generating quite a lot. 5,000 megawatts is
quite little.
That's
very
a university campus in some parts of the world, you know.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for that one, Justin. Let's move on to our next story, and this next story comes to you, Fred. Okay. This next story, it says here.
INEC releases
amended guidelines for elections. It's from the Premium Times, and given details into the story, it says the INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has released amendment guidelines for subsequent elections, and they're saying a 33-page document was made available to reporters. Please take us through the story.
Yeah, so the story just says that they have released these guidelines, and this supersedes any other guideline that exists before now, right? But in another article that I just looked at, it said that the party, the coalition of united political parties, were not happy with this current amendment, and there was one of the things that we're pointing to was reference to simultaneous accreditation and voting, which which is now in this new article, right? Saying that it would lead to allowing people with fake PVCs and all of that to to participate. And then they should stick to the guidelines that existed in 2015. Although INEC has said that in some off elections they had already started working with this guidelines. Before now actually currently presenting it, which seems pretty late anyways. But that's the situation at hand.
So with these new laws that are in place now, do you see that with the coming elections in a few weeks, is it possible that there might be more changes, given that well, they said that in 2015, this particular one, that in 2015 this is supposed to counteract what was put in place for 2015. Do you think that any other new thing might come up?
No, I don't. I think this. So obviously, once it comes to elections, when it comes to election cycle, the different parties fighting for the opportunity to be in position. So there are different ways you can disqualify, or different strategy you can use to sideline or give someone more power towards this situation. And currently, everyone is like trying to shake around and figure out what would work. But in this case, right, I've not looked at the the amended bill or gone through it to understand exactly what are the speculations or things. But just looking at this reference to simultaneous accreditation, it speaks to me like you'll be able to accreditate voters
Okay.
on the spot, right?
Yeah, you
And
know,
that's
if I may.
yeah.
So in previous election cycles, what would happen if you went to the polling center was you would go in the morning, get accredited, and then go home and come back, let's say by 12 noon, 2
Or 1
o'clock,
p.m.
or 1 p.m. for voting for you to now cast the ballot. But I think what they're saying now is that intermission is no longer necessary. So you come to the polling station, you get accredited, and you cast your vote immediately.
Yeah, so
I don't know why anybody would have a problem with that.
no, but that's open to, because if there was a room for other people to be able to vet, kind of, just not like you're really vetting. but
That's
just
what the
being there.
accreditation process is.
That's what the accreditation process is, the vetting.
Yeah,
so we
so-
vet you, we accredit you, and then go to the booth and cast your ballot. So I don't know why anybody has a problem with, no, we want a break. What do you want to do break?
So apparently there's some about the 3 items in the new amended one, because there's a backlash. This is not particularly a new story, but sometime last week there was a guideline that they hit the refresh button on the guidelines and released it, and then everybody, the first reaction from the opposition or from the parties really why they fought against this or try to fight against this was because they felt if INEC was to go ahead or were to go ahead with this new guidelines, they would have just gone ahead to implement the new the general change the electoral law, as it were, from 2010 and as amended in 2015. But adding this new clause, just a part of it, a subsection of the electoral law, changing it at this point, he said it's too short a time that to make those amendments as well. So
For voter education, I guess.
exactly.
That's a point there.
So let's move on to this next story. I'll come to you, Justin, for this one. ASUU replies federal government today as members reject, they call it tokenism. And I looked up the meaning of the word tokenism, and it said that it's a recruitment of a small group to give appearance of a sexual or racial equality in a workforce. So in here, apparently the national president of the union, that's the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Professor Biodun Oguyemi, who disclosed this yesterday, said that the leadership took the federal government's offer to its members, but the members in turn turned it down, insisting that they would not be treated in such manner, that the time frame for payments must be attached to further agreements being made by the federal government. So there's an issue of trust going on here.
With good reason. I mean, just to cast the backdrop to this for fair understanding. So this squabble between the FG and ASUU has been over a 1 trillion naira value agreement, which was supposed to be paid in 5 tranches of about 250 billion. Since when the agreement was made, and we all know government is a continuum, so pointing fingers at the previous administration doesn't cut it. None of those 5 tranches has been paid. Now, ASUU has said to the federal government, listen, to show us commitment, to show us good faith, pay us 250 billion in 1 quarter, right? And then spread out the rest. So what we want from you now is 250 billion. The federal government has offered 35 billion, I think. And as we're saying, no, that's too small, which is where the issue of tokenism comes in. And I think the shade of meaning that applies here is, I'm asking you for your mountain and you give me a pebble.
Right.
That's not going in. It's a non-starter.
It seems like a placebo, so to speak.
In a manner of speaking,
of expression,
yes.
yes.
Yeah. So so ASUU has said, no, you're not going to do that to us this time. Now we want you to make a commitment, and we want you to put a timeline to the commitments that you're making. So if you're telling us you're paying us 100 billion, for instance, now that's me using that figure. ASUU didn't say anything about 100 billion. If you say it's 100 billion, we want to know when you're paying, and when you do pay, we want documented evidence. Because part of the thing that the ASUU guys are saying is, even what you're telling us you've paid now, we've only had verbal speeches. There's no evidence of that payment has been made. So ASUU is standing their ground. Like I called it 3 weeks ago, this is standoff in Oki's Corral. And honestly, if you want to know how much a society is going to move forward, look at the way it treats its young people and its elderly. We have made nonsense of education in this country, all parties concerned, ASUU inclusive. I'm on nobody's side here. They need to just buckle down and think about the future of the young people that is being messed with in this conversation.
Right. Thank you very much. Let's take a few messages. Drops mic, exactly. That should be added there. Leonard Josiah sent us a message. It says, haven't the GENCOS shut down already? Because there's no light, so we won't feel it even if they do. Yinka sent in another message. It says, our police, the same police that we know do not mentor anyone, and Inspector General of Police has 6 deputy inspectors attached to him. Why lose 6 top guys who may be less than 60 years just because an AIG is being elevated? I'm sorry, but it makes no logical sense, he says, and it all boils down to the fact that our police lacks a proper working system. Thank you, Inka. Olatunbosun is very upset about something. He says, with due respect to law and legal practitioners, this is why I hate the profession called law. He says, hate is a strong word now. He says, even when it's clear that someone is corrupt, one will still have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt that the person is indeed corrupt, and of course in accordance with the provisions of the law that is made by human beings. Moreover, one's fate, for instance, depends on how manipulative one's lawyer advocate is. Not entirely true, but it's a shame that the chairman of the CGN is found wanting. We'll get to that story, Lautenbosso, but thank you very much for jumping the gun a little bit, but we'll get to that.
All right, let's get into our next story, and this one here comes from the Punch newspaper. It comes to you, Fred. It says, hijab crisis hit LAUTECH. LAUTECH school, 50 locked out. And giving you insights into the story, it says the crisis over the use of hijab by female Muslim students has spread to Ladoke Akintola University of Technology in Ogumosho, and it was gathered that about 50 students who went to school in hijab on Monday were either locked out or asked to remove it. What are your thoughts about this?
So when I first read this, I had to check to make sure this was like a state school. So it is a state school. Means it's open to the general public.
Okay.
Being that, I think that the whole, although the what's that, the principal of the school says that they're still waiting on the board of the school board to to rule in favor or not for the
Wearing a hijab?
Yeah, the hijab. But basically, look, diversity is what drives everything.
Okay.
So freedom, and also this freedom of expression. This students are allowed to express themselves. They should have freedom to express themselves. Wearing a hijab doesn't. What does that do to anyone? Does that stop? It's part of their religion. It's part of So it doesn't. I don't see a reason why there's even an issue whether they should wear it.
But this has been a debate that's been going on for a while concerning this school. It says here, since 2011, barely 8 years ago, several letters of appeal had been written while we endlessly without concrete positive response to the request.
Yeah,
so
this
if it's been like that, maybe should it not be like a process where maybe they should wait until the proper...
Yeah. So they've been waiting, and apparently the students have been wearing barrettes, right, in place of this hijab. But the thing is, why is it even an issue to start with? Right? That's my point. Like, why is it an issue? How does that stop you from, being able to do your student duties or do the study or study with your fellow students?
So the question that comes to mind when this debate has gone on, several schools have had this issue. Are the students themselves the ones worrying about we're not being allowed to wear hijabs, or are people using the students to advance a religious cause? Because I don't imagine that a student is thinking about whether a hijab is on his head or on her head. Right? Let me just, I'm getting somewhere with this. This goes back to the previous story, the comment I made about the way we are handling the future of the young people in this country is dangerous. We are now stoking the fires of religious separatism in the minds of very young, impressionable people. Why in a secular academic environment are we having this ridiculous conversation about what you're wearing? The whole point of having a uniform is a form that is universal for everybody in that context. That is my definition of uniform. I'm not showing car, but hey,
Because-
uniform.
Mhm.
They are supposed to dress alike. They are supposed to create an equilibrium that now serves as a platform for people to focus on their academic studies. Why are we worrying about who's
So you're
wearing?
saying that it's not. It
So
doesn't
the
matter-
select
it
people
doesn't
should
matter
wear
whether
their-
hijabs
No,
or
no, no,
not.
no, no.
It shouldn't
No,
in
as
the
in-
context of school.
No, so
In the context of school,
It-
so
it's-
some can wear and others can choose not to.
Why is there an argument about it? There is a format for secular education. The students wear a uniform. Why do you want to buck that trend?
yeah,
If
so
you're so focused on-
I differ on that because I feel like your uniform, so you're wearing your uniform covers what? Does your uniform cover what you do with your hair, or does your uniform cover with so it's where does the uniform stop, and are they not wearing like the top and bottoms and sandals that you're asking them to do? Like wearing a hijab doesn't stop you from doing those things too. Like it's in these universities you also have religious studies, right? And if you're allowing different religious studies, or if they have or not, I'm not sure, but if they do, they're having religious expressions, then you should also be allowed to express yourself. Like it doesn't stop. My point is, it doesn't stop you, or it doesn't affect the next person that is studying next to you. So what's the benefit of stopping? Now you're stopping the students from actually coming to school. Now that's something that I feel like it's discriminating.
All right.
All
thank
right,
you
so
very much
looking
for
at
that
it
one,
both
Brandon.
ways, this case did not start today, like you mentioned, Justin. Excuse me. Last year, around September, this case was taken to the Supreme Court, especially when it affected the particular situation in Lagos, when the Lagos state government weighed in on this matter and appealed to stakeholders on the contentious issue to let peace reign. But we'll see where this leads us. Let's take a few messages here on WhatsApp: 0809 444 0981. This one is from Obi10 Kenobi. He says, on the issue of INEC, isn't the real question how it is, or shouldn't the real question be how is it that there's no need for a break to accreditate or accredit people, even though the technology did not change? How? These are the real questions we should ask, he says. Kolawole says, this coalition of political parties are not ready for election. Why should somebody disagree with INEC for introducing voting after you've been accredited? That's voting immediately or simultaneously after accreditation. Bookie says, the advantage of separate times for accreditation and voting is that everyone gets to be present when votes are counted. We all wait. Since the president did not sign the reform bill, we can maintain status quo in that aspect since it worked in 2015. Thank you, Buki. Let's move on very quickly to this next story, and I'll come to you, Fred, for your analysis on this one. Sorry, that's you, Justin. You lack the power. Actually, this is
No,
not
it's
for
me.
you, Fred. Yeah, yes.
Keep
Both
it in
of
the
us,
legal
no.
family.
Yeah,
No, I'm not a lawyer.
Hang on. It says, you lack the power to try me. Onoghen tells the Tribunal. That's from New Telegraph. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Onoghen, was expected to appear in court yesterday, but he was represented, interestingly, by 45 other senior advocates in Nigeria, 47 other lawyers. They all stormed the court to challenge the tribunal, to tell the tribunal to their faces that they lack jurisdiction to try this case.
Yeah, so this article is actually lengthy and has a lot of juicy details. So one of them, you stated there were 92 lawyers, 45
In
staff,
total, yes.
47. So the Alani Beku said, who is a son, who was representing the CJN, Chief Justice of Nigeria, said this was more of a protest, but there were a lot of, so them coming in the numbers that they did was more of like a protest.
Or it seemed like.
He said it, that it was like it was a protest, but it's in the article. But so there were a lot of technicalities. One of them was they were saying that the Code of Conduct Tribunal doesn't have the jurisdiction, for this, and they're challenging two things. They're challenging the jurisdiction they have, and they're challenging the jurisdiction of the tribunal to even file the charge. So those are two things, right? And then it also goes into, so the prosecuting counsel was like they had presented the defendant, which is the Chief Justice of Nigeria, with the charge, and they said they had to have presented it to him personally. So he was assistant that took it. So all these technicalities, and at the same time, they've also filed a suit against this sitting code of conduct, code of tribunal, that it's not, doesn't have the jurisdiction to, So all of this, at the end of the day, the court rules, this code of conduct rules that they actually should have filed the charges personally, or presented the charges personally to the Chief Justice, and they've now gone on to, adjourn to January 22nd, and they have to now present to him. So there are all these technicalities going on at the same time in regards to.
It's a travesty because we are talking about an arm of the government.
Yes.
The judiciary is not subservient to the executive.
Yes.
Or any other part of the government.
So that's why that's with the whole mob of lawyers
the
that show up.
The Constitution is clear. There is a body that has oversight over to whom the Chief Justice, as it were, reports, right?
Yeah.
And that is the only body that can sit down and hear the allegations against him in the first instance. Now you've skipped over that and you've gone straight to court. If you're going to break the law, at least break it with sense. Ijeh.
All right, let's move on very quickly from that story. Let's go to this next one. That's for you, Justin, from Guardian newspaper. Federal government moves to privatize Ajaokuta steel plant amid opposition. They said, well, they finally admitted, or they've been admitted for a while, but now they've spoken in unequivocal terms, saying that the federal government really lacks bad managers of infrastructure, and they're handing it over to the private establishments. They say it's gone beyond 90%. So that's talking about the arrangements to hand it over. Well, what are your thoughts on this, seeing that we've been talking about the redundancy of this infrastructure?
Ajaokuta steel plant. Well, first principles, the government has no business being in business. I'm a huge advocate of that. That said, we also do not have a good history of privatizations, right? We've mismanaged a lot of federal government assets in the past, Nikon, Nitel, Nigerian Railway Corporation, you name it. The argument for privatization has its own merits. But we just finished talking about GENCOS and DISCOs and the clownery that is going on, right? Here an argument is being made for privatizing Ajaokuta Steel. A lot of people are against it. There are pros and cons to that argument. My focus really, or my worry is, how are you going to handle this privatization if you go ahead with it? Now, the usual talking points of a competent firm with vast technical and financial war chest because of the important place steel industry occupies in the country's development. That's not me, that's I'm reading from the article. Right? Now we're ticking all the boxes. We said the same things about power companies before we unbundled NEPA and sold it off into bits and pieces, right?
Yes.
So this story, another thing that jumps out at me, it says he will not name the 11 companies that are bidding. Why will you not name the 11 companies? This asset belongs to the Nigerian people. We have the right to know who you want to sell our house to, so that we know whether they will let us into the kitchen or into the sitting room to watch television tomorrow.
Speaking to transparency and
exactly, and accountability. You're telling me you're going to sell the national asset, but you're not going to tell me who you want to sell it to. So I'll find out after the fact, and then we'll go into this charade of, oh, we thought they were competent, or no, they are not competent. Anyway.
Unfortunately, that's the last story we'll be treating inside of Freshly Press 91 today, but quick look at some of your messages before we wrap it up. And Mr. SI sent in this one. It says, interested. So LAUTECH still has the energy to engage the hijab issue after the school was locked down for months. And Tosin from Ikoyi says, true, why should a student make a big deal of the non-academic matter? Well, thank you very much for this. It says, for that school and uniform analysis, special thanks to you, Fred and Justin. Good morning, guys. This one says it's from, please add your names to your messages so we can read them. Benga Kamu said, there's another example there. This is another example of growing Muslim extremism in the western part of the country, and it's a part of the elite who's going about stoking this hijab controversy. Ngozi says, I'm of the opinion that if people of diverse faith want to wear the religious clothing, then they can go ahead to public, they can go to specific schools because they have those. Brilliant. Justin, okay, thank you very much for your messages. Lagos will take some more inside of Grapevine 91. We'll switch lanes to talk about entertainment, but special thanks to our analysts who came in here this morning at Mr. FB Allison. That's Fred Allison. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, Justin Ijeh. Find him at Justin Ijeh on social media. Thank you. Well, Kayode and I are still here. Inside of the Grapevine 91, we have fantastic stories and wonderful music for you. You're listening to Smooth 98.1.
I invest
So
where
what's
money
your
never
take
sleeps.
on this the Chief Justice. Are we off?
We're still recording.
All right.
On the Chief Justice issue.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the executive is overstepping. Honestly, the executive is overstepping, because even if the charges have merit, and I'm not saying he's above the law, but there is due process. This thing has to go to the Judicial Council first. The Judicial Council has to has to hear the merits of the case, make a determination, and make a pronouncement before you now proceed to criminal prosecution.
Yes.
This is the Chief Justice of the Federation.
So they jumped the gun
They
and
jumped
went
the gun.
straight. And then there's another part that
But he
I would
didn't
have loved you
state
guys
those
to
details.
tweet.
Exactly. He didn't say that you just.
What?
No, go ahead.
Uh,
He didn't say. He didn't detail it like that. I wanted him to
This
state it.
is backroom discussion.
No, but the thing about it is, there's a federal high court ruling. The federal high court in Abuja yesterday stopped the order that will stop the federal government from arraigning. Lawyers. So while that was happening,
There was
They had started
another
another
suit.
process.
There's another suit.
But
Yeah.
why do we embarrass ourselves like this?
that is the thing. So,
Why? Who is the lead? Who is okay? I wanted to say who is the White House counsel. Who is the ASUU counsel? Comedy of errors all the time.